The bunker buzzed with quiet life. Dust had been swept away, broken panels reinforced, and faint lights flickered on as Kayla and Jonas moved through the corridors, cleaning, salvaging, building something that felt almost like a home. But Mira hadn't left the old lab in days. The moment they arrived, it was like something inside her had ignited. A fire without fuel, pushing her deeper into the wreckage of the past. Her hands were stained with oil and solder burns. Wires dangled from the walls. Rusted consoles now blinked with artificial life. Pieces of tech, forgotten, shattered, or obsolete, were being rewired into something new. She barely spoke. She barely slept. And Ilaria noticed. In the dim shadows of the far corridor, she stood beside Veyron, her tone low but sharp with caution. She's been down there for days, building, talking to herself, like she's remembering things that haven't happened. She's focused, Veyron replied, arms folded. Driven. She's dangerous, Ilaria whispered. I don't say that out of fear. I say it because I see power, and where there is power, there is always cost. Veyron's eyes glinted. She said her father was a scientist, a man named Winter. Ilaria shook her head. Never heard of him. No one has, Veyron said softly, which in this world makes him either a ghost or a god. Mira crouched over a mess of wires and circuit boards. Her face was pale, her eyes darkened with fatigue, but her hands moved with precision and speed. She murmured calculations as she worked, layering frequencies, sketching out magnetic patterns. When Veyron stepped inside, she didn't look up. You need to rest, he said gently. You've not slept since we arrived. This place, whatever it is, it's pulling you under. I'm fine, she replied quickly, voice dry. And don't look at me like that. She finally turned, lifting a thick roll of aged paper and thrusting it into his hands. Look at this. He unrolled the plans. The lines were clean, detailed, complex geometry overlaid with energy grids, core amplifiers, and layers of shielding. Something half mechanical, half symbolic. What is it? He asked. A safe zone, Mira said, eyes lighting up. A real one, not just hiding in the dark, a space the Lycans can't enter, not even the Alpha. Veyron looked down again, scanning the notes. This isn't just theory, he muttered. It's rooted in our shadow craft, but there's something different. I took everything I've learned about how you and Ilaria cloak us, how the shadows bend, how scent is displaced, and added something that just came to me. Veyron raised an eyebrow. You understand how it works. She nodded. Every detail, frequencies, pulse layering, even the resonance field needed to scatter scent trails. He looked up. But you can't explain it. Mira's voice was steady. Not yet, but I will. She turned and gestured toward the power core embedded in the wall. Gutted, dead, ancient. This is what we're missing. To generate the field, I'll need enough power to pulse it in waves, constantly, so we'll need a few things. She listed them quickly. A magnetic stabilizer, military grade if we can find one. Old world capacitors, at least 2, ideally 4. A turbine or alternator, doesn't have to be clean, just functional. And something to anchor the field, organic or spiritual, a core tied to both will and memory. Veyron blinked. Memory? Mira looked at him, tired but glowing with certainty. It's not just science, it's resonance. The same way your shadows respond to fear, this responds to hope. Behind them, the door creaked. Ilaria entered, her expression guarded. You should be resting. I will, Mira said. But first, listen. She stepped forward, holding the blueprint in one hand, the other slightly trembling from exhaustion, but her eyes were clear. You told me hope was powerful. You were right. I think we can do more than hide. I think we can win. Ilaria stared at her, silent. I don't just believe it, Mira said. I understand how. And in that moment, the bunker felt less like a tomb and more like a beginning. Mira finally slept. Her body gave in, not to exhaustion, but to something gentler. A strange calm settled over her, as if the universe had allowed her just a few hours of peace. Outside the lab, in the dim glow of the makeshift bunker's lights, Veyron and Ilaria stood in quiet conversation. She was but a child when I found her, Veyron said softly, his voice lined with something between awe and uncertainty. No name, no memory. Surviving on instinct. So, how does she know this place like she built it herself? Ilaria looked towards the lab door, her eyes half-lidded with thought. You found her, she said. Or she found you? Veyron didn't answer. I don't believe in coincidence, Ilaria continued. Not with her. She has power, but not the kind we can feel, not aura, not scent. Something deeper. A resonance I cannot trace. It's like she's tethered to something outside of our understanding. In her dream. Mira floated through memory, half-formed and glowing. She was 4 years old, barefoot on cold tile, her little fingers tracing the walls of this very house, when it wasn't ruin, alive, filled with warmth and voices and light. She saw Mara, her mother, beautiful and calm, sitting by the fireplace. Daddy's in his lab, Mara said with a tired smile. You can go see him if you like, but don't touch anything, little spark. Little spark, Mira giggled and ran. Down a hallway, lit with blue strips of safety light, the walls clean and sterile. She reached the lab door. It slid open on its own, and there he was, Simon Winter, bent over a glowing piece of tech, tools hovering in mid-air on a floating rail, his eyes gleaming behind round goggles. He turned as she entered, and his entire face lit up. Oh, there you are, he said with a chuckle. He swept her up into his arms and spun her gently. What are you doing, Daddy? She asked. I'm working on something for Mummy. She hasn't been well, and I'm going to help her. He set her down and kissed her forehead. Now remember, he said, lowering his voice, this room is full of things not meant for children, so look with your eyes. Not your hands, she said, giggling. He winked. Then, as if prompted by some unseen cue, Simon stood and walked across the room to the far wall. He placed his hand on it. A section slid open, silent and seamless. Inside was something small, silver, softly humming with pale blue light. He glanced back at her and held up one finger to his lips. Shh. Mira awoke with a start. The air in the lab was still. The buzz of reality replaced the warmth of memory. But she remembered everything. She sat up, bolted from her cot, and ran, still barefoot, down the corridor towards the lab. Veyron and Ilaria turned as she passed them. Child, Veyron called, stepping forward. You need to rest. You are shaking in your sleep. Wait, Mira said breathlessly, pushing into the lab. I saw something. She ran to the back wall, scanning the panels. "This wall! There's a hidden panel here!" Ilaria and Veyron exchanged a glance. They slipped into shadow, their forms melting into the cracks and corners of the lab like liquid smoke. They re-emerged a few seconds later. "There's nothing here," Ilaria said coolly. "I assure you, if it was hidden, we would have sensed it. There is no spiritual trace, no protection field." "No," Mira said, stepping forward. "Not magic, not shadow, memory." She placed her hand flat on the wall. For a moment, nothing. Then click, click, hiss. A narrow vertical seam split the smooth surface. With a soft mechanical sigh, the panel opened inward. Inside, a small octagonal cradle, lined with copper and quartz, and resting in it, a delicate device, about the size of a child's palm. Silver, angular, still humming. It looked like a shard of crystal and machine had merged into one. Inscribed on the casing, nearly faded, Winter AI Core / Mara Lock. Active. Mira reached in slowly. Her fingers hovered, not quite touching it. "It's him," she whispered. "My father. What's left?" Veyron stepped closer, cautious. "What is it?" "I don't fully know," Mira said. "But I think it's him, a part of him. Maybe not his mind, but something encoded, something anchored. It might be the very thing we need to finish the field." Ilaria said nothing, but her eyes, once full of caution, were now quietly stunned. Mira turned to them, fire returning to her voice. This is the piece I couldn't explain." She held the device close to her chest. "Now I can." Time had passed. Not much, but enough to make the old bones of the underground sanctuary feel alive again. Kayla and Jonas stood in what had once been a medical bay, now scrubbed clean and repurposed as the central hub. "We've cleared 10 rooms," Jonas said, leaning against the wall. "Enough for sleeping quarters. Kayla even found old solar panels. We've got partial lighting. The lab's up and running. Kitchen's functional. Even a makeshift bathroom. This place, it's starting to feel like something real." Kayla nodded, wiping her hands on her pants. "There's room for more too. We could fit, I don't know, 20 people, maybe more." Before she could finish, the door slammed open. Ilaria burst in, her expression grim. "We have company." 2 humans, Ilaria continued, exhausted, wounded, and 20 lichens on their heels. Jonas's face paled. "We can't open the hatch," Ilaria snapped. "If even one of them gets in here, we're all dead." Kayla's voice trembled. "We need to help them." Veyron entered the room, calm but serious. "You sensed them?" he asked Ilaria. She nodded once. "And I feel them now," Veyron added. "The lichens, 20, maybe more. Close. We need to stay silent, hidden. If we act, we risk everything." Ilaria breathed slowly. "Then we mask. All of us. Complete shadow veil, not a breath louder than death." The lights dimmed as the elders began to concentrate, their forms beginning to blur into the bunker's walls, shadows thickening, curling over the ceiling, cloaking the room in hushed stillness. Above ground the hunted. Through the snow-covered forest, 2 figures stumbled, blooded, battered, and barely upright. Sergeant Ava Rourke and Lieutenant Tess Calder, former military, now survivors with nothing left but instinct and grit. Ava had a deep gash along her ribs, Tess a limp from a shattered ankle. Their breath fogged as they pressed through the trees toward the ruined farmhouse ahead. "There," Ava rasped. "Cover!" Tess shook her head. "Not enough. We're done. We're out of time." Behind them, they heard it, the low growl of 20 throats. The pack. The sound was not footsteps. It was thunder. The earth vibrated. The trees shivered. They collapsed in the ruins, hiding behind a fallen beam, both breathing in short, broken gasps. "I'm not going out like this," Tess whispered, eyes wide. "I don't think we get to choose," Ava answered. And then the lichens emerged. 24 hulking, snarling monsters, black eyes glinting, jaws wet, teeth long and gleaming with hunger. They circled slowly, one howl, then another. The ruin was surrounded. There was no escape. Below, silence. In the bunker, Jonas and Kayla sat frozen, eyes wide, hands trembling. The air was tense, compressed like a loaded spring. The sound of the lichens' approach rumbled even through the reinforced walls, like war drums in the dark. Then a new sound. A click, a creak, the sound of the hatch opening. Veyron's eyes went wide. "No!" Ilaria turned to him, lips parted in horror. "Mira!" Above the stand, the lichens readied to pounce. Ava and Tess huddled together, eyes closed, hands gripping each other like it was the last anchor to life. Then a sound from behind them, a slow, measured footstep on the snow. Mira. She stepped out from a hidden seam in the snow-covered ground, through an old shaft she'd repaired herself. The hatch closed behind her without a sound. On her arm was a crude metal gauntlet, patched together with wires, energy nodes, and at its heart, the winter AI core, softly pulsing with pale blue light. The lichens turned as one and charged. Mira stood her ground. "I've run from you long enough," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the chaos. "I thought you were unstoppable, all-powerful." She didn't move as the first of them leapt, mouth open, claws raised. "You took my friends. You took my memories. You took me." In the distance, from the woods, Veyron exploded from the shadows, casting every ounce of power he had in a desperate shield. But before he reached her, Mira lifted her arm. The device blinked. The AI flickered to life, a spectral voice whispering, "Energy pulse ready." She stared into the jaws of the beast and said, "Now you will be the ones who hide in fear." She triggered the core. The effect was instant. Every lichen stopped mid-stride, muscles locked, claws trembling mid-air. Their bodies froze as if time had seized them. Then, one by one, they began to collapse. Not dead, but broken, deactivated, halted. The snow fell gently over them as they lay still in the silence. Ava and Tess stared in shock. Veyron reached Mira's side, breathless. "You," he whispered. "I remember who I am," she said. And then, quietly, with snow swirling around her, Mira knelt beside the fallen creatures and wept. Inside the bunker, the air was thick with tension, but the mood had shifted from dread to disbelief. Tess Calder lay on a makeshift cot as Kayla stitched up the deep tear on her leg. Nearby, Jonas was wrapping Ava Rourke's side with gauze, her ribs bruised but not broken. "You're lucky we got to you when we did," Jonas muttered. Tess gave a sharp, pained laugh. You didn't. She did. Ava nodded slowly. That girl. She's not just a girl, Kayla said, tightening a knot. She's Mira. And she's something else. Tess winced, shifting upright. We were holed up in a government facility. Class 3 underground installation. State of the art. It should have stayed hidden for years. Radiation shielding, geothermal power, scent disruption vents. Everything, Ava added. And still, they found it. Sniffed us out like blood in water. The walls started shaking one night. We lost power. Then we lost the others. Only the 2 of you made it, Jonas asked quietly. Tess nodded. We were stationed at the outer perimeter, on watch. We fled while they were screaming. Kayla's hand froze for a moment, then went back to the bandage. In the lab. Meanwhile, Mira stood in her lab, back hunched over a dim terminal. The AI core rested in a cradle near her, its light low and flickering like the embers of a dying fire. Veyron stood nearby, watching her work, his face a storm of curiosity and awe. Well, you need to tell me, he said finally. How? How did you stop them? Mira didn't look up. I intercepted their neural patterns, she said flatly. Specifically, the part of their brain that processes instinctual aggression and pack communication. The AI helped me isolate the right frequency. Frequency? She turned toward him, wiping oil from her fingers. They're not just beasts. They're linked, like a hive. The stronger the alpha, the stronger the bond. That bond has a frequency, a kind of bioelectric hum. I disrupted it, overloaded it, temporarily severed their connection to the alpha. Veyron blinked. You switched them off? In a way, she nodded. The device, what I built, it channeled a pulse guided by the Winter Core AI. It helped me calculate the exact harmonic interference. But now, she held up the core. The light barely glowed. It's drained. The energy needed to send that kind of pulse nearly burnt it out. Without a proper power source, I can't do it again. Veyron frowned. And what kind of power would suffice? Mira didn't answer. She just looked down at her father's core and whispered, something bigger. In the main hall, Ilaria stood before Tess and Ava, who had now been fully treated, and sat sipping hot water beside the small heater. The others have briefed you on what we are, Ilaria said calmly. Elders, Ava said slowly. We heard the myths. Didn't think you were the helping type. We weren't, Ilaria replied with a small smirk. Times change, so do some of us. She took a step closer. This base of yours, she asked, folding her arms. Would it happen to have any of the following? Magnetic stabilizers, industrial-grade capacitors, turbine components, or field anchor regulators? Tess raised an eyebrow. I don't even know what half those things are. We're soldiers, Ava said. We were mainly security, surveillance, routine patrol, perimeter defense. That lab had levels we weren't allowed into. But it was high-tech, Ilaria pressed. Tess nodded. Yeah, military was trying to build something down there. No idea what. We just followed orders, watched doors, cleaned weapons, drank recycled water, and tried not to lose our minds. There was a pause. Then Tess asked, who the hell is that girl? And can she do that again? Because if she can, with that weapon, we could turn the tide. Ilaria's expression darkened slightly. Maybe, but it takes more than a device to wield that kind of power. It takes a will strong enough to anchor it. Tess exchanged a look with Ava. Then you better hold on to her, Ava said. Because the world out there, it's barely hanging on. Ilaria stepped closer, voice low and serious. Now, tell me exactly where this base of yours is. The shadows bent. They coiled like smoke through the splintered remains of the old military facility, stretching across blood-stained corridors, dragging silence behind them. From the shadows emerged Ilaria, her figure forming from vapour, dark eyes scanning the devastation. The walls were lined with blood, some dry, some fresh. Bullet holes riddled the metal, doors hung off hinges, broken lights sparked overhead in irregular bursts. Filthy, she muttered. She moved silently, gliding from shadow to shadow, seeping through cracks and shattered steel, slipping through the tiniest spaces like smoke drawn through keyholes. She didn't know what exactly she was searching for, only that Mira would need this place. The tech, the components. Something buried here would feed the fire Mira was building. Deeper below. She descended through broken stairwells, past fallen signs and burned-out checkpoints. Old retinal scanners blinked uselessly. Signs of panic were everywhere. Blood smears, dragged boots, claw marks. Security doors barred the way, but they couldn't stop a shadow. She slid in through the metal, her form reforming in the darkness of the next room. An expansive space, once filled with scientists, soldiers, life. Now it was silent, cold. She walked into the main research hall. Flickering emergency lights blinked dimly on the walls. Consoles sparked with life, running diagnostics with no one left to see them. Power hummed from somewhere deep below. Ilaria's eyes narrowed. There's still power, she whispered, which means they have what we need. She turned slowly, scanning the room, already planning how she would bring Mira here. This place had the hardware, the energy, possibly the components Mira needed to reactivate the winter core. She stepped towards one of the active terminals. Then she heard it. Tap, tap, bang. A hollow, unnatural sound, like flesh slapping glass. Ilaria froze. She melted into shadow again, vanishing, hiding from whatever might see. Tap, tap, thud. She slipped through the air silently, moving toward the sound. At the far end of the chamber stood a reinforced containment tube, cracked but not broken, thick glass lined with steel bands. Inside, a figure. It was moving, twitching, jittering, snarling against the glass. Its skin was pale and sloughing away, eyes clouded white, its jaw dislocated with every snarl. Undead. The creature flailed against the inside of the tube, mindless and enraged, banging fists against the glass over and over again. Ilaria watched, disgust and caution etched into her face. So, she said softly, stepping closer, this is what they were working on. The thing didn't react. It just kept pounding. Your mind is gone, she whispered, but your hunger isn't. She turned her back on the thing, and as she melted into the shadows once more, she spoke a final word. Too bad you'll never get free. And then she was gone. Moments later, the safe house. Ilaria stepped into the bunker's central chamber. The lights flickered slightly as her shadow form solidified. Veyron was already waiting. You found it? He asked. Yes, she said, wiping dust from her cloak. The lab was destroyed, but the power systems are functional, and some of the equipment Mira needs is likely intact. She paused. But there was something else. Veyron raised an eyebrow. What? An experiment. A containment tube. Her tone darkened. An undead creature. Veyron straightened. Like the old ones? No. This one was recent and made by human hands. I believe this facility was experimenting, perhaps attempting to control or even create something beyond the lichens. She stepped closer. It's still locked away, but it must be destroyed. Veyron's voice dropped to a whisper. Necros. Ilaria nodded slowly. If he ever claims this world, there will be no resistance, no shadows, no safe zones, only death. She looked him in the eyes. That thing must be dealt with, before he senses it. The lab was quiet. No hum of machinery, no tools clicking, just a single flickering light overhead, gently swaying from the last of the bunker's recycled air. Mira sat in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself. The glow of the dormant AI core dimmed softly nearby, like a heart that had forgotten how to beat. The door creaked. Ilaria stepped in slowly, her voice silent, but her presence unmistakable. Without thinking, Mira stood, took one step, and collapsed into her arms. Tears came instantly, raw, shaking, unstoppable. Ilaria held her, arms wrapping around the young girl who had carried the weight of a war, and now the weight of memory. It's too much, Mira sobbed. The memories. My mummy, my daddy. Ilaria said nothing at first. She simply held her, rocked her gently like a mother would a lost child. Then in a whisper, There, my dear. Take a moment. I am here for you. She pulled her closer. I know it's hard. I lost my parents too, long ago. And yes, I cried. I screamed. It's okay. It's human. Just let it free. The minutes passed, silent but heavy. Mira cried until there were no more tears left. Eventually, she wiped her face and stepped back, her voice quieter now. My memories. They were gone. Suppressed, somehow. She looked at the floor. Did my dad do it? Or was it the trauma of losing them? I don't know. But now, she said, placing her hand gently over her chest, I remember everything. She looked up at Ilaria, eyes bright despite the redness. I am Mira Winter, named after my mother, Mara. She gave a small, broken smile. Dad said he named me that because his love for Mummy would never fade. He told me once, as long as your name is spoken, she's still alive. Ilaria's eyes glistened, just for a moment. Mum had Alzheimer's, Mira continued. It came fast. He worked day and night on a cure. He was so close, but they came for him, pulled him away to help with the war, the Lichen War. Her face twisted slightly. She died while he was gone, and after that, he just... No, Ilaria said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. He didn't give up. He put his hope in you. She looked into Mira's eyes, serious but soft. It seems to me he knew you would come here, that you'd find that core, that your memories would return when the time was right, that you'd remember who you are. She smiled. It seems to me he is still here, in you. Mira took a shaky breath. Daddy always spoke of things no one understood. Not even Mummy, but I did, even when I was little. She turned towards the AI core, still flickering faintly, and it's all starting to come back. The wind outside the safe house bit cold and deep. It whispered through broken branches and across snow-covered roots like the ghosts of a forgotten world. Mira walked alone, her boots pressing fresh tracks into the frost-covered forest. She didn't look back. "I need some air," she had told Veyron. "I'll call if I need help." His voice echoed gently in her mind, not intrusive, just present. "I'll be watching. Without the core, you're vulnerable." But Mira didn't feel vulnerable. She felt clear. The caves. The cliffside loomed ahead, jagged and dark, like the bones of the earth had been torn open. Caves gaped along the rock face, their mouths black with silence. Something pulled at her. Not memory, not reason, just gravity of the soul. "Be careful." Veyron's voice drifted again. "These caves are no doubt the resting place of the lichens." She entered anyway. The stones swallowed the light behind her. Inside, everything was still and heavy. Her footsteps echoed in the hollows of ancient predator dens. Claw marks lined the walls. Bones were scattered along the floor, as if even death had been forgotten here. She walked until the air grew thick, then stopped and spoke, to herself, to the dark, to him. "You lived for her, but you died for me." Her voice trembled, not with grief, but with resentment. "You built miracles. You defied nature. You cured the incurable. You gave her the world, and left me with its ashes." She turned slowly, running her fingers along the cold stone. "You could have survived. You should have. You owed me that." Her breath caught in her throat. "But instead, I woke up to a world on fire, alone, surrounded by monsters." A pause, then she smiled, just a little. "And I killed them." The words echoed. "I killed the wolves, and I enjoyed it." She laughed softly, not madness, recognition. "I saw their eyes when they stopped moving, when they realized I was stronger, smarter, when they felt fear for the first time. I liked that feeling." She sank to her knees, pressing her hand into the earth. "Every day, the people back at the safe house seem further away. Their voices feel quieter, their thoughts slower." She looked into the dark. "I see things they never will. I solve things they can't begin to understand. And they call it a gift." Her eyes narrowed. "But I know what it is." She touched the empty spot on her wrist where the AI core once pulsed. "It's a curse. One you left me." Silence returned. Only her breath filled the void. "You gave everything to the world, and nothing to me." Back at the safe house, Ilaria stood with Veyron, both facing the long corridor Mira had disappeared through. "She hasn't come back," Ilaria said. "She will," Veyron replied. "But she's not who she was when she left." Ilaria tilted her head. "She's powerful, maybe even the one from the prophecy." Veyron frowned. "She's not even one of us, not an elder." "No," Ilaria said quietly. "She's not." She turned her gaze toward the far chamber, where the light from Mira's lab flickered faintly. "I think she'll be far more than any of us could ever be." In a throne of bone and shadow, beneath skies that never moved, he who remained sat perfectly still, but his nostrils flared. He smelled it. Absence. Silence. His lichens, some of them, were gone, not lost. Killed. He growled, low and deep. The sound shook the earth like thunder buried beneath the soil. Around him, thousands of lichens stirred, With no words, only sound, growls and roars and ancient howls, he commanded. Seek, find, destroy. The horde moved, an army of shadows crashing through the world toward a new threat, toward her.